Let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We have a couple more registered participants who might trickle in. And of course, please click join stage to participate in the webinar. It's always great to have people in the room and not be talking into a void. So feel free to stop me at any point and ask questions. Put your questions in the chat. Just come off mute and interrupt me. This can be as interactive as you'd like. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kendall Levinson. I'm coming to you from Bozeman, our Bozeman headquarters. And I started and I'm running Montana Language Services. And today we're going to be talking all about translation and interpretation and using our software and making translation and interpretation requests. So I know that everybody's, been learning a lot of new things, and I'm hoping that this is not just another boring training video. So just stick with me, and I hope to make this as painless as possible. Feel free. It looks like we've got a lot of participants from Missoula today, which is really awesome. I'm very excited that language access is becoming more prevalent in Missoula. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat so that other participants know where you're coming from. All right, let's get started. So today we're going to be covering what I call the IDRS method. And the IDRS method is just an acronym for a process that will help smooth out your workflows when you're dealing with language barriers, because sometimes it can get a little complicated. So we're going to go through this four-step process so that if you forget everything, you remember IDRS. Identify the native language, decide which type of interpreter you need, request the interpreter, and work with them successfully. So we're going to go through each of those steps, starting with identifying a speaker's native language. So I'm working on some I Speak cards right now with a on the front, and on the back there'll be a standard operating procedure. But when you meet someone who doesn't speak English, the first moment can be a little bit awkward until you have identified what their language is. And in Missoula, you see a lot of really cool diversity of languages, from Arabic to Dari, Pashto, Swahili, Lingala. In Bozeman, we see Tagalog, we see Vietnamese, we see Ukrainian, we see Burmese, and we've gotten Romanian several times. So it's very cool that in Montana, you get these random language groups that you wouldn't expect to see in a place like Montana. So it might be rare that you bump into a language that you might not be able to identify. But if that happens, we have I Speak cards that we'll be distributing out. And then also, I always say to lead with curiosity. Get out Google Maps, ask questions, make gestures. This is a good moment for Google Translate. But it will be rare that a speaker, an LEP individual, so LEP stands for Limited English Proficient. It'll be rare that an LEP speaker does not know the name of their country, the name of their language in English. So, and I suggest if you go somewhere like Thailand or Japan or whatever, the first word that you learn in another language is English, or the USA, or how to say I don't speak your language, etc. So sometimes that initial interaction can be a little awkward, and so my recommendation is always to embrace the awkward, have a little compassion for the other person, because it takes a lot of courage to walk up to somebody and initiate a conversation with a complete stranger when you don't speak their language. And so it's also very important not to make any assumptions. about what language they speak, because you don't want to waste money on booking the wrong interpreter, booking the wrong or translating a document into the wrong language. And so let's say, they say something like China, and you have to uh, find out which dialect of Chinese they speak. Don't assume that, or don't just request for a Chinese interpreter. You need to find out if it's Cantonese or Mandarin, and there are other dialects of Chinese as well. And so there's 6,000, 7,000 languages in the world today, lots of different dialects. Really important not to assume and let the speaker self-identify with what language they speak. Another really important aspect of identifying a speaker's language is to notify the public of the availability of language services. So I will hammer this home with every organization. If you're front facing, if you have an office where you get walk-ins or phone calls, or you have a website, or any marketing materials, and you're trying to get people to come into your office and use your services, then providing notice that there is translation and there is interpretation available to them in their language, so that they can raise their hand and say, I need this, I need language access. That's the first step to making sure that they feel comfortable approaching your office and asking for language access. So notification to the public. And another thing is when you do identify their language, track that data in your system. Let me check the chat and see if you guys introduce yourself. Yeah, so I don't know what departments you're coming from in Missoula. Maybe it's Parks and Rec, maybe it's the courts, but either way, most departments have some kind of case management system, some kind of data system. If you have a way to track that language data in your system, then do so, because your leadership will thank you for it. Okay. Any questions on the identify step? Parking commission. Yeah, so parking tickets. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see who is using the parking commission and for what language. So I don't know if you have a language or any kind of data tracking in your system. We will do a lot of that data tracking on our end as well. But for more complicated departments like the courts or public health, they'll have patient records or case records, and they'll need to flag those files for limited English proficiency. So if you flag a file for limited English proficiency, the next person that works with that particular resident will know ahead of time they need to pre-schedule an interpreter for this language, etc. Great. Okay, so identify the native language is step number 1. Step number 2 is decide which tool you need. So there's a ton of language tools. That's our specialty. We're trying to give you as many tools as you can, and also teach you how to decide which tools to use and when. So in a big nutshell, there's 2 different language tools that we provide: translation and interpretation. Translation is for written text, and that is everything from an email or a text message to a full website, to all the case documents for a criminal case, or anything that is written in written text will require translation. Now, we're going to talk about in a second, we're going to talk about machine translation, Google Translate, AI, things like that. But just know that when you're requesting a translation, you're going to go to our website and click translate a document. And when you click translate a document, you'll be prompted to fill out that form. We'll go through that in a second. So written text, translation, and localization. interpretation is for spoken language and sign language. So an interpreter is a human being who erases a language barrier when you're speaking to an LEP, another language speaker, a limited English proficient speaker. This also applies to sign language. So ASL, or Signed Exact English, which is called C, those require interpreters as well. Now, the difference between an on-demand and a pre-scheduled interpreter is very important, and we're going to go into that in great detail. But just know that through Montana Language Services, at this time we don't offer language classes. We do have a partner in Montana that called the World Language Institute. They offer language classes at this time, but with us, you can always get documents translated and phone, video, or on-site interpreters, and we'll go through that in a second. Let me show you really quick our homepage, mtlanguageservices.com. On our front page, you'll see a Translate a Document button, and this Translate a Document button will take you through to a form to fill out where you will upload the file and tell us how to contact you, click Submit, and we will be able to, first of all, give you a quote for the document, and you can pass that off to your supervisors for budget approval, etc. So find the editable file, the source file, if you can. So we charge for formatting fees if the file is a PDF or a formatted, let's say it's a marketing brochure, any kind of audio that's not transcribed in written form. If you can find the source file, that'll be the most cost effective. Of course, we can translate anything and everything you send us. However, just to give you a heads up, the source file will be the most cost efficient to translate. So again, fill out the request form. You'll have to approve the quote, and then keep your translated files in the same place you keep your English files, so that if you do update the English version, you won't forget to update the other language version. That way you don't have a file that's 10 years old in another language, but you have the English version is very up to date. If you have a giant file and you only have updates to make, you can send us the updates and highlight the updates, and we'll just do the updates. You don't have to retranslate the whole file. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. So that's how to decide which type of translation you need and which type of, how to request a translation. Now, let's go into how to decide which type of interpreter you need. And this is where it gets a little complicated. So we have two teams. We have a pre-scheduled team that you book in advance, and an on-demand team that you can call from our app. And so we're going to learn how to do that today. The pre-scheduled interpreters. Now, the difference between these two teams are the pre-scheduled interpreters are a 1 hour minimum. We ask for a minimum of 72 hours advance notice to pre-schedule interpreters. But of course, as much notice as possible is recommended, because it really depends on the request, on getting, we can't guarantee we'll fill every request, but the more advance notice you give us, the more likely we are to give you, to be able to fulfill your request. Now, maybe not at the parking commission so much, but if any of you are from the courts and there's a long jury trial that's coming up, you'll want to book those interpreters ahead of time. For doctor's appointments that are scheduled, you'll want to book those ahead of time. And that is a very simple booking form on our website. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Now, for on-site phone and video, there's a couple different types of interpreters that you'll want to use for different situations. Now, unfortunately, on site, even though it's everybody's first choice all the time, it's not the easiest to fill in terms of on-site requests. Now, we are trying to build the interpreter pool in Missoula for the rarer languages that you guys see. But at this time, we mostly have Spanish interpreters. In Missoula, we have medical and legal, and in Bozeman as well, and in Helena, Billings, and whatnot. But for the rarer languages, we're trying to train those community interpreters so that they can become qualified. And so at this time, it's difficult to get an on-site interpreter for the rarer languages that you see in Missoula. So we often roll over to phone or video because we can patch in our rare language interpreters from all over the country. So, and even some former refugees from Missoula are now interpreters for us that live in other states. And so, you know, they live in California or Washington, Colorado, Idaho, and these interpreters can be patched in over phone or video. Now, for complicated subject matters, you're going to want the best interpreter possible. It might not apply so much to parking commission, for example, but the more complicated the subject matter, the more you're going to want to patch in a very qualified remote interpreter. And for even the giant jury trials that last 2 weeks, those require an in-person interpreters that you might even want to fly in and put up in hotels so that they can spend 2 weeks working on an interpreted trial. So deciding between on-site and video depends on the length of your request, the length of your appointment. It depends on the complication of your appointment, and also depends on the privacy of your appointment. So we recommend phone interpreters for private situations. Although our video system is just like where you are right now, it's just like a Zoom meeting, so you can always turn off the camera and turn off the video, and turn off the microphone if you'd like. So that is very anonymous. However, phone works great for when there is no internet connection, there's no viable technology. Maybe the person that you're trying to speak to doesn't have an internet connection or can't connect to your video call. So that's when phone is great. So the pre-scheduled team we hand select from from Bozeman, our Bozeman headquarters. Even though they're national, global, we work with a ton of really amazing people. We vet them and we select them. The on-demand system, which we're going to use today, is a national pool of interpreters. It's available on our app, and it's available from a 406 number, and it's available from our website that you can log into. Now, these calls are a 5-minute minimum, so you'll use the caller when it's an emergency, you don't have anybody pre-scheduled. You'll use the caller if it's a very short interaction, maybe you're confirming an appointment. You can use the caller when you pick up the phone and somebody's speaking in another language and you have to patch in an interpreter and merge those calls, which is very rare, but it's available to you. You'll want to use the caller when you have requested an interpreter, but we could not fill that appointment. So you'll back up. You'll use the caller as backup. Now, the caller has about a 10 to 30 second response time. And so But for video interpreters, they are more responsive in the more common languages, Spanish, Vietnamese, ASL, etc. And then there'll be a little longer of a wait, or they might even roll over from video into phone when you get to the rarer languages like Swahili and Dari, etc. Now, I'm going to teach you how to log in and get set up with the on-demand caller. But I'd like to point out that using video is now becoming the industry standard for interpretation, which is why having this app downloaded on your phone and using a video interpreter in person is really just going to add a lot of humanity to your interactions. I don't know if you felt like, for example, during COVID, when people had masks on, it was hard to understand people because you couldn't read their lips. It's surprising how much reading lips and watching facial expressions contributes to the meaning of our communication. So try to prioritize video as much as possible. Now, I put that on site is not available on demand because obviously we can't have people on site on demand everywhere. What should be every organization's goal is to hire bilingual staff for their most common languages. Like in Bozeman right now, a Spanish bilingual staff member is a rare unicorn. So people are trying to hire bilingual staff members left and right. It's a little more complicated in Missoula, where you have such a large diversity of languages, but bilingual staff members are great on site and on-demand interpreter if they're authorized to do so. And I'll give you the link to another webinar about empowering bilingual staff members so that they don't burn out, but they're great. They're great resources. Any questions on this, the difference between deciding to book an interpreter in advance, deciding to use the on-demand system, and deciding whether to use on-site phone or video? Great. All right, so we have, next we have our on-demand system. So let's see, I've got a couple people's emails in here. I wonder would you guys mind in the chat writing down whether or not you've received an invitation link from Montana Language Services to to set up your password? And if not, would you mind putting in your department name so that I can add you in on the back end right now, and you can get that link to set up your password. So we've got Danette in Parking Commission. I see that. Okay. My internet is going so slowly today. You're set up on the web page. Okay. So the web page is the same password that you're going to use for the app. Great. Yes, you are enabled. Fantastic. Let me get Interpret Manager. The name of the app on the App Store is called Interpret Manager. It's got this blue icon here, and it's from the Boostlingo software team. And this is Google Play, but it's also available on the iPhone store as well. And so for those of you who haven't downloaded it yet, that is step number 1, is to download the app so that you can make calls in and out from your phone. It's also available using a 406 number. So if you don't feel comfortable downloading that app on your phone, that's fine. You can also call a phone interpreter, and I'll show you how to get your PIN number. or you can bookmark our web page and log in from your work computer. So there's a couple different ways to access the on-demand system. So go ahead, download the app, and then also bookmark our website, our homepage. So let's go back to our homepage. All right. Now on our homepage, let me log out of this system. Sign out. There we go. On our homepage, you have a big fat login button at the top right, and that is where you can access the on-demand system from your computer, from your laptop, from your desktop, from the courtroom, from whichever computer you need to access the on-demand system and call an interpreter. You'll log in right here, and it'll take you to, oops, stopped sharing. Let's try that one more time. It will take you to our login screen. So this is after you set up your password, you should have be able to sign in and access the dashboard. This is what will appear. Now, for on-demand calls, you'll see a phone on the top right corner. You'll open that on-demand caller. This is exactly what the phone app or the tablet app looks like in when you download the Interpret Manager app from the App Store. So I'm showing you how to use it now. This is what it'll look like on your phone or tablet, but again, you can access it from a computer. Now, there's three little dots here where you can click to choose your gender preference. This is very helpful for cases of domestic violence, you know, pap smears, OBGYN visits. Probably not as important for the parking commission, for example, but it is available to you. These two buttons here are to choose whether you'd like a phone or video interpreter. This speaker is for phone, this camera is for video, and then you will choose your language from the drop-down. Now, there's obviously hundreds of languages, so I usually type in the name of the language so that it auto-populates. For something like the parking commission, you will choose community specialization. Obviously, we have legal, court, medical, education for public school systems. We're adding in construction, vocabulary specialization later this year. But the parking commission, front desk, if they're paying a parking ticket, etc., then it'll be community language. And then you'll click call. Once you're in the call, maybe I can call somebody right now. I'm going to go ahead and call somebody. And let's see if I can, oh gosh, it's going to create a whole wormhole. That was very fast.
Hello, my name is Abdullah. I will be a Swahili interpreter.
Hello, I'm just doing a system demo today, so there's no need to interpret. We're just gonna show our clients the video software. Thank you. Okay, so you'll see that you can see my laundry in the background. Isn't that nice? So you'll see that there's a camera off button, and you'll see there is a screen sharing option here. You'll see as well that there are a few other screen sharing options that you can play with. Now let me make this a little bit bigger, and you can see that there is a plus button here. In this plus button is very handy for when you want to call out. Let's say you need to call somebody that only uses WhatsApp. They don't have an American phone number, so you can just share this link, the link to this video call, and it invites them in just like in a Zoom call, Google Hangouts call, etc. You can also share, you can also dial out, you can share the link by email. It's really awesome. Then you have also this chat box that where you can type to your interpreter. That's about it. There's really not a lot needed. All right, thank you, Abdullah. Appreciate
Okay,
you.
have a nice.
Have a great day.
Okay,
So you'll be able to rate your interpreter, and then if you need to redial that interpreter, they're available for a minute or so right afterwards. If you hung up accidentally, that same interpreter is available, but make sure to do it right away. I don't know how long this stays up and is available. Otherwise, you'll recall another interpreter. It'll be somebody completely different because this is a national pool, 15,000 interpreters that are available to you. Any questions? Awesome. All right, so that is the on-demand system. Okay, so we have another thing that's available to you is called the IVR Quick Dialer. I don't know why it's called IVR. It's not smooth. It's not a good title. It's not catchy. But what that means is if you don't have the internet, if you don't have your password, if you don't have, you know, your app downloaded, etc., there is a 406 number that you can call and enter in a PIN, and you can get a phone interpreter. This has been kind of the gold standard for interpreting systems for the last 50 years or so. But the one thing you'll need to do is remember your PIN number. Now, I'm making these I Speak cards with a space on the back where you can write it down, so you can keep that at your desk. But until then, I'll show you where to find your PIN number. You'll have to write it on a sticky note, put it on your desk so that you don't forget. When you log into your account, let's close out the caller. When you log into your account, there's a configuration button on the left, and then you see the 406 number, and then these question marks. You hover your mouse over it. That's your PIN number. You can call the on-demand interpreters over the phone using this PIN number. You just have to be able to access it. So that is also available to you. Sometimes that can come in handy when you pick up the phone, they're speaking another language, and you have to merge the call with an interpreter. I don't see that happening very often. If it does, it happens in Spanish because callers sometimes get a tip from a family member that they have bilingual staff, so they'll pick up the phone and call. But most of the time, people are not so brave. I'm not even that brave. If I were to learn some basic, I don't know, some basic German, for example, it would take a lot of chutzpah to pick up the phone and call an office and speak to a German speaker. That doesn't happen very often. So, but that is available to you if you would if you need it. Now, if there's no more questions about on-demand interpreters, then we'll go into how to request an interpreter in advance if you need to pre-schedule an interpreter. And now, the easiest way to do this, and I'm giving you this because not everybody's going to log into their portal, but the easiest way to do this is to bookmark our homepage and fill out this form. So click Book an Interpreter, and you'll fill out a form that says, which language you need, which type of language it is, and then when your date and time of the appointment is, where you'd like your interpreter to appear, and then, of course, telling us more about the appointment and how to get in contact with you. That is the easiest way to book an interpreter. That applies to everybody everywhere. You don't need a login. You don't need to mess with any of the portal stuff. But of course, some organizations have a lot of appointments, especially public health and court systems. They manage a lot of appointments. And so this portal has a calendar system. So again, logging in on our website and going to the appointments tab, you'll see that there is a calendar system in this portal. So I'm just gonna stop for a second and ask people if anybody in this room works with interpreters on a regular basis or might be pre-scheduling on a regular basis. Because you might not need this portal if you aren't pre-scheduling on a regular basis. If you are pre-scheduling interpreters on a regular basis, then you'll need to understand, or it'll be very helpful to be able to use this portal. And in this portal, you have a viewer of all of your appointments. So let's say, I think I have a bunch back in here. Some example appointments. So let's say you make multiple appointments for your office and you need to keep track of all of these appointments. You need to make sure that they're confirmed. We have a few clients that do pre-schedule quite a bit, so this is a very handy tool. These cards, these little cards, and they can be viewed in a calendar, they can be viewed as a list. These are all of your appointment requests, and you can view them. They have a lot of details on them by clicking the open button. These are obviously canceled. This is a demo account. There's not a lot of information, but these appointment viewers have all of your appointment details. There's an activities tab for tracking those details, etc. So I can teach you how to use that. I just want to make sure that everybody is this applies to everybody, because this is not required. So again, I showed you the booking form on our website. You can fill this form out and we will put the request in on the back end. So it is not required that you create appointments in this portal, but it is very handy if you are using multiple appointments at the same or if you're pre-scheduling interpreters on a regular basis. So there's a create an appointment button where a form will pop up for you to fill out a request. And then there's also a viewer of all your appointments, a bunch of filters that you can use to view different statuses of your appointments, different languages, etc. One important thing that might be handy for you, even if you don't use this on a regular basis, is to open the appointment tab and to look at details. Let's say, for example, this is canceled, but maybe it says confirmed. If you want to know if something's confirmed, you can go into the portal, look and see if this is confirmed. You know what I mean? This appointment will have a green flag on it, and you can see this is confirmed. So the interpreter will show up for your appointment. You can see where the Zoom link is. We'll put the Zoom link in this in the appointment viewer. You can see the date and time. You can also change the appointment from inside this portal, and you can see what other staff members are doing in your department. So perhaps somebody changed the appointment, they made a mistake. You can go in and see who did that and maybe talk to them about why they did that. You can also see the rate and billing history, and you can cancel appointments. Right now, it's not available because this is already canceled. But to cancel appointment, you'll have an option to do that. I'm gonna put a link in our in the chat for how to how to request an interpreter in advance. This is a YouTube video, and you'll feel free to watch this or share it with anyone at your office if they need to know more about how to use that system. All right. Any questions on that so far? Sounds good. All right. Last little bit. So we've identified the native language. We've decided which type of language service we need, and we have requested the interpreter or called the interpreter, and now the interpreter has showed up. So how do we work with them successfully? And of course, this is it's not second nature. It's not natural. It's really a new type of conversation. It's regulated. You have to take turns, and it takes a long time. So it definitely takes patience. I always recommend that you book a little bit of extra time than a normal conversation would take, because you will repeat the same thing. Everything needs to be said twice, so you'll need a little extra time. The most important thing for working with an interpreter successfully is to tell our project managers and tell the interpreter before they start, ahead of time, as much as possible about the context of the conversation or the details of the conversation or the subject matter of the conversation before they even start. So that the interpreter can judge whether or not they feel comfortable interpreting for that situation. So language is really funny. You can speak a language, but maybe you don't speak, gynecology, or maybe you don't speak like framing and roofing. Maybe you don't speak legalese, right? So just being bilingual is not enough. You have to know whether or not you feel comfortable in a subject matter to be able to interpret accurately and interpret well. We've had interpreters that have hung up the phone because somebody didn't warn them that this is we're in a mental health crisis situation. There's child, abuse and child trauma and sexual violence, and the interpreter felt so uncomfortable that they hung up the phone. So you need to warn your interpreters ahead of time what exactly it is that they are interpreting for. Probably not so difficult in parking commission, but we see all kinds of different situations. Now, the interpreters are trained to use the first person. They'll say I feel this, I do that. They won't use he or she. And so it's important that you also address the LEP, the limited English proficient individual, directly. The conversation is between you and them. It is not between you and the interpreter. And so try to avoid saying, tell him this, tell her that, etc. Just look the LEP directly in the eye and have a conversation with them. The interpreter is simply there to erase the language barrier, and they will use the first person pronouns. I feel this. Do you feel that, etc. Now, number 3 is mostly for the attorneys that I work with, but try not to monologue. Try to speak in a couple sentences and then stop and allow time for the interpreter to speak. This affects accuracy. If you're just rambling on, then the interpreter can't remember everything that you say exactly. A good interpreter will stop you, but of course, try to just be conscious of that and take some turns. If there is any misunderstanding, try to just restate what you said, or ask the LEP to repeat back important information to verify that they understand. Some very important never do's and do nots are not to have any side conversations about the LEP in their presence. Interpreters are trained to translate everything that is being said in the room for transparency. It's also just plain rude, and it's also you never know how much English they do understand. They might not feel comfortable speaking, but they might get the gist. So even if you're just talking about how was your weekend, and making side chat, it makes the LEP feel really, really left out. It makes them feel like, hey, what are they talking about? Are they talking about me? Are they talking about important information? Super important not to have side conversations with the interpreter or with anyone in the room. Um, that's not that's not a part of your LEP conversation. Another really important do not, what would you even call that? Another important, yeah, piece of advice for avoiding trouble with when you're working with interpreters is never ask the interpreter their opinion on the conversation. Interpreters are trained to be very neutral, not provide any opinions, not provide advice, not provide explanations, especially on matters in which they're sight translating. So don't ask the interpreter to jump out of their interpreter role and insert their opinion on it. And then, of course, if you speak a little, whatever language it is, it's nice to, say hello and be welcoming and be curious, but don't use the interpreter's time to practice whatever language it is that you're learning. I encourage you to practice as much as you possibly can, but this messes up the cadence of the interpreters. The interpreters are used to code switching in a certain direction. So try to avoid that. And then, this probably won't happen in the parking commission, but we do see this in the courts. If you have a very, very long appointment, more than 2 hours, more than 4 hours, or several weeks, then we require that you book 2 interpreters to switch back and forth, because it is a very mentally taxing job. I don't know if you ever feel curious and want to try a little experiment at home, watching Netflix, try just to repeat exactly what it is that the person on TV is saying in English, not even in another language, but just try to repeat exactly what it is that they're saying in real time. It's so difficult. So we always require 2 interpreters for longer appointments so that they can switch on and off. In Montana, last couple of things. In Montana, it's possible there's a couple conflicts of neutrality because the interpreters come from small communities of language speakers. And so if there is a conflict of interest, then the interpreter's trained to dismiss themselves. If they do that, there will be no charge to you, and you can use the on-demand system as backup. If there's any total breakdown in communication, then the interpreter may intervene, but otherwise they should be kind of as invisible as possible and keep your concentration on the conversation with the LEP. All right, that was a lot of information. How does everybody feel about that? I hope that that was not too much. If you ever get lost, here's our office number, here's my email, here's our website. You can reach out to us or just click book an interpreter, or translate a document on our website. And then also I have a couple more webinars that I'm hoping people will engage with, and that is empowering bilingual staff as essential resources. So making sure that these bilingual staff, have the right compensation for their work. They have the right language proficiency tests. They also are not being authorized to interpret unless they are trained to interpret. These are the kinds of things that I'm teaching. And so here's a link to our full list of webinars. I do another one about machine translation AI, when to use it, when not to use it. I do webinars about the healthcare industry, about building bridges in the community, law and order. I'm starting to work on multilingual construction sites and how multilingual workforces can communicate with each other. So feel free to share this list with anyone. It's open to the public. And I hope to see you at another webinar in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and feel free to also follow us on social media. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll stick around for questions.